All right, we are live and streaming for today's Habitat Lunch Break series. My name is Katie Koswich. I'm the Illinois Outreach Coordinator. Today, Dallas is going to be joining us again. He is going to be talking about how landowners can improve existing native habitat that they might already have on their property. During this, this is our second one of the series that we have done. So just during this, to give everybody a little heads up, if you have any questions or anything that pops up while Dallas is talking, we encourage you to leave a comment with your question. We are going to try to answer as many as we can at the end. If we don't get to your question, we are going to come back afterwards and answer those. So if we don't answer your question during this recording, check back. We will answer that after we're done. We also will, this will be on our Facebook page. We're also recording this. We will share this also on our YouTube channel. So Illinois Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever's YouTube channel. But without further ado, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Dallas and let him talk to you about how landowners can improve some existing native habitat.
Hi everybody, Dallas Glazik. I'm a farm bill biologist located in East Central Illinois. Yeah, as Katie said, we're going to be talking about some habitat enhancements and good ways to improve either CRP or non-program options. So I'm going to have a couple things here, some slides that highlight management related towards CRP, and then the goals of that management. Then as well, going to be touching in a little bit about my own personal project, which is a little fun since I like to try to experiment with some different management techniques. That site is actually on an organic farm, so I'm not allowed to use chemical. So I rely heavily on prescribed fire for my management techniques. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And as Katie said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll try to get to them. Let me share a screen here. Alrighty, so here is a presentation over prairie and grassland management. I'll go through some of the slides kind of quick, and then we'll touch up, stop here and there on particular sides. So, going through the agenda, going to be over plant community. So that's going to be touching why management, management tools, CRP contract management. And then my favorite, going over how to burn safely and other prescribed fires. So the goal with conducting management and to revitalize your prairie is actually you're trying to hit this early successional habitat state. And if we look at this chart here, this is a succession graphs. So you have there on the far left, bare soil, which if you're ever around a tilled field, you'll see there's mourning doves and killdeer and stuff like that are using it. And then all the way up to a real dense forest. And here in East Central Illinois, we were predominantly grassland area, and then oak hickory forest on the river bottoms. So you can see in the red circles here that early successional habitat, which is the grassland to grass shrub, is your ideal location for a lot of your hunted species here in Illinois. So that's what we're trying to keep our prairies looking like with the use of management to set back the clock of succession and going from there. All right, and the three tools that are allowed for CRP is prescribed burning, disking, and herbicide application. Now, one that you can do on your own is actually prescribed grazing and mowing and hay. These two options, even though I've been messing around with them on some non-CRP sites, are really, they're not allowed in CRP, but can really kind of change up the ecosystem as well. So disking. What you're trying to do here is expose bare soil. You're cutting back some of the grasses, opening up that soil so it allows the forbs and other wildflowers to get some sunlight and flourish or germinate and flourish again that next year. And so, yeah, you want to disc in the fall or early winter months to encourage wildflowers. Keep it real shallow. If you're running a disc, it's not like you're working a field. You want to stay shallower and shoot for that 50 to 75% bare soil. And then also I have in here, since thistle and reed canary grass spread by rhizomes, do not disc on top of them. Otherwise, you will just spread that problem. You will split the rhizomes and have more thistles and reed canary grass. So here's just kind of an idea. The circle is around a tree, so you know the location here. This is best done in strips. So you want to spread out and diversify your project. And so by doing it in strips, you allow some good cover with your grasses, and as well as you get the flourishing of the flowers. And you see that's that same tree, and you can see the yellow flowers of where that strip was. So you can really change your ecosystem there. So for herbicide application, this one is predominantly if you have trees or invasive weeds in your prairie plot. So these are some typical chemicals that are used. I'm a big fan of your triclopyr, or I call it picloram products that are your tordons, your garlons, and stuff like that. And they do really effective against your woody vegetations. If you have cottonwood tree encroachment or stuff like that, it's really good. And definitely be sure to follow the label, and it can be used to set back grasses as well. This is both for cool season and warm season grasses, because a lot of these older projects, they get grass encroachment from the edges of your cool season grasses, such as brome and fescue. And a good time to hit those, you can hit them with glyphosate in the spring or the fall when your warm season grasses are dormant. And then if you're wanting to hit your warm season grasses, you can spray glyphosate in late summer. I would also recommend, if you're going to be attacking your warm season grasses, such as your switchgrass and big blue stem, if they came in too strong, to look at a grass selective herbicide such as Select, because in that late summer, glyphosate will harm your broadleafs as well. So you'll be killing off your late summer and fall forbs. And as well, you want to stick with that strips and blocks. Try to avoid treating the entire area at once. Oh, I'm going to go back one. Yeah, so the grazing, mowing, and haying can be used. Like I said, it is not for any CRP, and so if you have a non-program prairie patch that you want to use grazing or haying on, feel free to reach out to us. But if not, you just want to spot graze and spot hay or mow, and the haying is better than mowing because you remove the litter with the haying, where the cattle will recycle the nutrients there. So just here's some pictures of what you're going for. So this is a lot of your grasses filled in there, and with the management, you're revitalizing your forbs and allowing lots of sunlight back to the soil. For CRP contract management, do talk to your local office because it is required for all CRP contracts, and make sure that you hit the dates and ask for cost share and stuff. So yeah, so you're required to do 100% of the acres in years 3 to 6. And so if you are, that would mean if you started a contract in the year 2017, you should be considering your mid-contract management. And as well, you have to avoid nesting season, which is April 15th through August 1st. So you have to do management between August 1st and April 15th. So let's go over a couple of scenarios there. Be disc half in the fall of 2015 and disc half in the fall of 2016. So you split up your management, you allow different levels of succession on your prairies. So you want those different habitat spots to get different species. And with burning, look at burning no more than a third. And so this is, you can break it up into thirds, and a burn plan would have, would already have it broken up into thirds. All right, so now I'm going to touch base on some prescribed fire, my favorite form of management. Big reason is very inexpensive, and it does a great job of removing the litter, allowing light into it, and just revitalizing the prairie. It was built with grazing and fire in this area, so that's natural tools or work really good for it. And so that's that site. After being burned, you can see a lot of that bare soil, which is going to flourish and turn a lot more of your wildflowers into bloom. And so it's really good, effective of killing trees. It'll kill them if you're about 7 inches diameter and less. And then as well, you remove the litter so they're easier to find if you go through with either mechanical or chemical treatment. Here is one good thing to think about. So times a year of what you are trying to accomplish is big. I would say fall flowers, spring grass. So if you burn in the fall, you are going to be promoting your wildflowers and other cool season species. And then if you burn in the spring, you're actually stimulating your grasses. And I'll pull up some pictures of my prairie now, because this is one system that I'm using to control on my prairie. So this here was a picture of my prairie during the burn. You can see it was really full of grasses, and it was predominantly cool season grass, smooth brome. And normally I would recommend a glyphosate application in March. However, this being on an organic farm, I can't do that. So I was using this chart, and I was been burning in this March to April time frame to stimulate the warm season grasses, so I could choke out the cool season grasses. And then once I had the cool season grasses choked out, I switched back to burning in the fall, and that actually increases the forb diversity there. So that fire, it comes through and it really cleans things up. You have a lot of exposed sunlight down to the soil. You have a lot of mineral and nutrient availability. And then after that, this was actually how it turned out that following growing season. So you can see it is a little heavier on the warm season grasses in there. However, did get a big flush of bergamots and coneflowers after that fire. So it worked out pretty well. And then run through this quick. If you are looking at fire for a management, be sure to, I want that. So yeah, so this would be kind of a standard standard burn CRP in this area. You'll have your burn area, and be sure you want fire breaks along the side. Those can be disked, green, wet lines, etc., because you do want to keep off from your neighboring properties or areas you do not want to burn. So fire breaks are a landowner's best friend. So we're going to touch base a little bit on that. The disc fire breaks is something I personally enjoy. It's quick and easy. You get in there, you just disc it, and fire has a really hard time at burning bare soil. And you can see that it'll be burning around it and just come to a halt. You can do disc with mode. So what this is if you have a smaller disc, you run the disc there, then you run a mower, and you're lessening the fuel load as it comes up to that disc line. So if you have, for this scenario, there's the trees there, and they didn't want too many sparks arcing up and into that other area. So they mowed this strip just so you have less fuel load and shorter vegetation as it comes up to the main fire break. So green fire breaks, this one here is a wheat field. Fire has a really hard time of burning green vegetation. And so you can use neighboring wheat fields or sometimes some ditches or establish green fire breaks for that purpose. And then a road can be used as a fire break, but do keep in mind safety as a big precaution here. Make sure that it is rarely traveled and you have proper notification that there is a prescribed burn going on. And then this is a technique that's commonly more used for the DNR because they don't want to go through and disc up any vegetation. They actually use a black and wet line. So they'll have the water tank behind them and will actually spray their fire breaks so that the fire does not pass. Quick little things here. You have the backing fire, ring fire, and head fire. Do not stick with just a head fire. And I'm not going to go too much into fire since I know Ben Wilson will be covering it later. So I'll let him go over those examples. But yeah, that is what you are trying to accomplish with management is you are resetting the clock of that succession and bringing your prairie back to that early successional stage so you can have a flush of wildflowers that is predominantly most beneficial for this particular area. So if you pheasant hunter or you enjoy just hikes through prairie flowers, be sure to consider management to slow or set back that leg of succession.
All right, thank you, Dallas. So great notes on, and kind of ironic if you were in, I know definitely central Illinois, around my area. I heard of you down south. Very ironic we're talking so much about fire today because if you're in Illinois, you know, we had a few issues with, as far as I know, none of them were prescribed fires. Most of them were just crop fields with machinery in the dry and the windy weather. We had a lot of fires popping up. But fire is an important tool. And as you mentioned, on October 23rd, we are going to be doing one of these lunch break series with Ben Wilson, who's going to actually be talking about conducting fall fires. So very ironic considering everything that happened in the state yesterday. So did have a few questions for you. You mentioned early on when you were talking about disking that people should be really careful with disking to avoid thistle and reed canary grasses, because when you break up those ribosomes, you're actually just making the problem worse. What if people have those spots? What should they do to treat spots of reed canary grass and thistle?
Yeah, a good thing for reed canary grass and thistle are more your chemical options. They can be really good. Stinger is a good chemical brand for thistle. Glyphosate can be used on reed canary grass, and really just look at isolated spot treatment because those patches, they'll take over a patch and predominantly stay and grow in that patch. So They're easy to catch whenever they're early. One thing with the thistles, I would mention, do check the underside of the leaf if you have a really tall thistle, because there is a native prairie thistle. It looks similar to a bowl thistle, but it has a paper white underleaf. So there are some native thistles, and those are good sources for monarch butterflies during their fall migration. They're blooming during that time, and so not every thistle is a bad thistle, is what I want to mention. Canadian thistle does have the rhizomes, where bull thistle doesn't have is not as aggressive. So you're looking at Canadian thistle, reed canary grass, phragmites, stuff like that as your predominant invasives that you don't want to disc, and chemical would be one of your better options.
Yeah, especially with that phragmite, I'm fighting that right now. So when people are looking at these plots, we talk about mid-contact management, and some of them have to follow a timeline because they are CRP, but you and me actually did a video on this a few years ago about how, you got to give, especially new prairies, a little bit of time to establish themselves before you decide you need to start doing some management to improve them, because they do take a while to establish. So how old should a native plot be before you start looking at it and saying, I need to disc, I need to burn, I need to do this?
Yeah, unfortunately, it does depend. I usually recommend landowners holding off till that 3rd to 5th year before they really start considering management. But if they're in a tricky situation to where they have cool season grasses coming in quite aggressively, if they're surrounded by brome or fescue, or if it was a previous brome and fescue patch, then they should consider management more and sooner into establishment. I've also seen projects that are surrounded by trees and along rivers, and so they fight the woody species early succession a lot more with cottonwoods and whatnot. So if you have an invasion of a aggressive species, then you need to consider management quicker. But if it's just your early successional weeds, such as your pigweeds, your water hemps, your foxtails, I would hold off until that year 3 to year 5 mark, because a lot of those get choked out on their own as the prairie matures, and those natives really take hold. They will actually smother out a lot of those common ag weeds. It's just the other perennial grasses and woody vegetation that you're really looking for in those first years if they're going to be a problem.
All right, and so I got one more question for you. You touched on it very quickly, but it is something we've seen people, especially if you're doing prescribed fires, sometimes you just want to burn it all at once so you don't have to come back. Why should people not disc, burn, mow their entire plots all at once?
Yeah, so you don't want to treat the entire thing at once, because you want to have some of that existing habitat there. If you were to burn the entire area, you are voiding the habitat value of your site, and so you'll have all your birds leave, or potential of damaging more nests, or the biggest impact will actually be on insect communities. And so you want to stagger your management so that you have different stages of that succession. If you recall that graph I had, the best was from bare soil up until that shrubland. So there's 3 different points there. So if you just think about trying to keep within those 3 and do a 30 year, be the best way to kind of keep that in mind. And then with prescribed fire, I definitely want to point out the whole thing does not have to be black. Patchy burns are actually good burns. And if you notice, my picture had pretty patchy spots, and don't go back with a drip torch and nip those. Those become key ecosystem spots, especially for your insect communities.
So you keep on talking about the insects, and a lot of people, when they come to Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, don't really quite realize how obsessed the staff is, or the birds for that matter, with insects. So why is it so important, if you want birds, that you need that insect community?
Yeah, if you want birds, you need to develop an area that's good for insects, because 90% of a chick's diet is solely insects, and adult birds in the spring and fall have a lot of insects that they consume as well, trying to get that rich protein. So I always like to say it's the same mindset of, if you want big bucks on your property, you got to manage for does. And so if you manage for insects, you're going to be bringing in hens because they want to find a good spot for their chicks. And if you bring in hens, you're going to bring in roosters. And so if you want to shoot roosters, start thinking about those insects.
All right. So thank you again, Dallas. As always, I'm learning a lot. I've got my own property that I've been learning how to manage the 5 years here with Pheasants Forever. So for anybody that is listening, our biologists do provide technical assistance to landowners, and there are certain counties that they're assigned to that they can actually come and help with, CRP contracts, equip, safe contracts. So if you're looking for the nearest Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever biologist, visit www.ihuntil.com. So www.ihuntilinois.com. And then under our Team Illinois, you'll find all of the biologists. If we do not have a biologist stationed in your county, contact the closest one. That can still provide technical assistance over the phone with, and try to help you out as much as you can to get as much native habitat on your property as possible. We will be having another one of these Habitat Lunch Break series tomorrow. We are rescheduling our Habitat Lunch Break series covering how to prep a grass site for a future native pollinator site. So we are rescheduling that. We will have that. As always, thank you, Dallas. Thank you for everybody that turned in, and we look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow. So have a great day.
Good one, guys.